So I joined the center in early November. Our team was expanding, and so was our office space. We got the second office.
Hi, my name is Gita, and I'm a researcher at ACK. Part of what I do at the center is I study copyright and intellectual property law. I help produce Harvard Law School's network course, Copyright X, here at the American University in Cairo, and I've been here for about 6 months.
My name is Innova. I just joined the Access to Knowledge Development Center a few weeks ago. It's part of the Data Revolution project.
One of the things I really enjoy within our work at the Access to Knowledge Development Center is the relationship we have with civil society here in Egypt. Our research is about change. The purpose of our work is to bring about change. And one of the very important challenges of bringing change is the civil society. But the kind of relation that we have with them is not just a mechanical relationship with civil society, it's more of collaborative friendship, meaningful friendship. And you will find members of this community that are very, very articulate, very solid in their field of work, and we continue to learn from each other. So it's a kind of mutually beneficial relationship for the same purpose, very much into the access to knowledge paradigm, the freedom paradigm, the idea of knowledge is cornerstone for development, but also knowledge that can be promoted through technologies, but also that can be hampered through the misuse of technology. So there's a common understanding, there's a common shared beliefs, shared values, and this is something we really take pride in.
What I love about ATK4D is that it's the sense of community and the networks that we are a part of. Not only are we a really close team here in Egypt, but as well I love the opportunity to work with teams from different countries around the world, with our partners like Berkman, and with other friends from different networks. And I think this is a real strength of ATK4D, when you really feel that you are part of a global network of centers working on research on access to knowledge.
So in my 4 years of working at ATK4D, I have had a tremendous opportunity for self-growth and learning. It's a great environment where you can invest in yourself, and you are invested in by your peers and by your boss. So this is what I like most about the center, the environment and the potential for growth.
What I find fascinating about the center is that it provides a platform and an opportunity for young people to come in and explore their potential. And it's not something that is quite well spread in Egypt, because the younger you are, the less you look at academically. Nice that I have this opportunity, along with my colleagues, as young people, to come in and do that actual serious work.
With my previous experience in the academia and research environments, I appreciate the spirit at ATK4D a lot. We're very much like cooperational. It's a lot of brainstorming together. There's a lot of feedback from the colleagues, which makes research much more collective than ever. And especially in doing research, it's often just you and your laptop. But here, I feel like it's very much a group effort.
What's so unique? Definitely the exposure. We're very exposed to lots of things, notion to expand and explore and meet with people. I would say most definitely exposure.
One of the things that I love about working at ACK is the really amazing women that I get to work with every single day. It's an incredibly collaborative, inspiring group of women who are very productive and challenge me on a daily basis and allow me to produce the best work that I can. I think that when the group comes together, it's like having this really awesome, powerful force, and we collaborate really well together, and we produce amazing results, and it's really fun to work with Dr. Marla and all the amazing women, amazing talented women who really achieve the most.
I first heard about ATK4D when I was working in America 5 weeks ago. The association's office, which was the association for research. I was not only in the center's operations, but it has been very interesting to see how they do. We started in 2010 with Innova as a research team, and then we started taking home projects and receiving grants, and they grew
very much, everyone, for coming, and thank you, Vito. Vito put this video together. First time that you all see it, so thank you very much. I will introduce our woman president, President Lisa Anderson, to give you words about our
Thank you very much, Michael. I want to reassure all of you men, and there's some smart men at ADC as well. But it is a delight to be here and a delight to be able to celebrate the work of these young people and the project as a whole. As you all know, this is the kind of issue that a place like ADC should appropriately be seized with. There is a lot of social science literature, as you all know, on the role of technology in shaping and reshaping identity and community. We know that knowledge is shaped, defined, and disseminated in different ways, and the media in which that happens actually matters. So I was struck by the observation that part of the community of the Access to Knowledge for Development Center is not just you and your laptop. And, you know, for those of us who remember a time when there were no laptops, it does make a difference whether you say it's you or your laptop, or you or your pile of books, or you in the library. Those kinds of things actually are part of what we're trying to understand through projects like this. What difference does it make that you think of yourself as interacting with a laptop as opposed to interacting with the library? We know from the literature, vast literatures on history and technology, that the printing press made an enormous difference in the availability of knowledge, the shaping of knowledge, the definition of knowledge, the way we began to think of ourselves as human beings connected to other human beings changed as a result of the printing press. We know that imagined communities developed out of the availability that of information as a function of print capitalism. We know that the state and the bureaucracy that we associate with the state grew dramatically as a function of the capacity to keep, maintain, and extend records. And so lots of the kinds of things that we take for granted about the way the world was organized, actually reflects the technology, the information, through which information was developed and disseminated and curated. And were there not these kinds of technologies, the vast imperial states that controlled much of the world for the last centuries would not have been possible. So the real question is, what do these new technologies mean for the 21st century? Not just simply the technologies themselves, but what do they mean about us as human beings? How do we redefine ourselves as individuals? How do we redefine our relationship with authority, with each other? How do we think about our identities and communities? And it's quite clear that the new digital technologies that are the focus of this kind of research are going to reshape the world on the same scale that the printing press reshaped the world. And some of that we can anticipate, and some of it we can't. Clearly, the way we imagine the communities we belong to is already being reshaped. I'm still struck, because I come from an earlier era, that I have friends on Facebook that I've never met. How do you have a friend you've never met? That just seems hard for me to imagine. But that implies a different way of defining the community of friendship that each of us is a member of. So that's a trivial example, but I think there are important examples, and I think those are the kinds of things that this project really will shed light on and help us understand. Clearly, there are kinds of economic relationships that are possible as a function of these technologies, crowdsourcing of various kinds of order relationships are reappearing in a way that they hadn't existed for a long time. Education is changing because obviously you don't need the content that you needed when you were learning things 50 years ago. The content's in your pocket. You need to know techniques to manage that content. Political identities are changing. Clearly, the definition of interest and around which many people organize themselves over the last several centuries is beginning to change, and values are taking precedence over interests in interesting kinds of ways, in part because of the availability of information. Those all seem like opportunities. At the same time, there are going to be challenges or perils in this new world, and some of these you're also thinking about as you think about these kinds of technologies. The capacity to exercise surveillance over communities is obviously quite dramatically enhanced through these kinds of technologies. This is some of the debates that are going on across the world about what kinds of information should be available to whom about each of us as individuals. But it's interesting what that means. We tend to think of that as invasions of privacy or prospective invasions of privacy, as well as opportunities to be visible to advertisers, to communities that we might be interested in being visible to. If it's true that half the commercial transactions in Egypt go unrecorded today, the likelihood that that will change over time very quickly as these kinds of technologies become more and more the currency with which people operate. If we have smart cards for distribution of subsidies, if we have telephone wallets and so forth, the recording of transactions, the existence of the informal economy will become increasingly visible to the world. And that will have consequences for governance, it will have consequences for economics that will be quite profound in a context like this. The formalization of the economy in Egypt, I think we can imagine in a way that we couldn't imagine even a couple of decades ago. So clearly some of what's going on before our very eyes is what one would think of as good, and some of it is what we might think of as dangerous. And that's really part of the challenge. How do we understand and address the different value significance of the technologies that are arising before us? Some things are probably going to be good. There'll be better services, more accountability. Some things may be bad, depending on how you think of this. There'll be less privacy and less space for nonconformism. Is that a good thing or a bad thing? As a quasi-historian, and this is my last substantive observation, I think we have thought a lot, or at least as much as you can in the decade or so where we've been thinking about this, about extension in space, that we now have access in space to the globe. I could find out things that's going on all over the world in a way that I couldn't even a decade ago. What I don't think we know at all is what the consequences of changes that these technologies will have in time. Because one of the things that's important in the stability of states is archives and record keeping. And what will be the consequences of these technologies for the way we think about record keeping? I don't know what the answer to that is. I don't frankly think anybody does, but it's a very interesting. It seems to me it's not only going to change our spatial dimension, it will change our temporal dimension as well. And I think that's well worth puzzling over a little bit. In any event, the point is that I'm very proud that AUC is one of the places that's leading these kinds of discussions. This country is one of the places in which these kinds of discussions should be taking place, because I think a lot of the challenges and a lot of the opportunities will be more visible sooner in a place like Egypt than would be the case in many other parts of the world. So I think Egypt and the region is a good place to be thinking about this. There really are opportunities here. And of course, for AUC, you can draw on a real depth of talented faculty among the students and the research staff at the university and the quality of AUC. And I think that's something that we're extremely proud of. It's a wonderful university. This is one of the leading research centers at the university. The credit goes largely to Dr. Nettles, but all of her team and her network of collaborators are participating in deepening our understanding of some of the most challenging issues that we confront in the world today. And I'm very, very pleased to be able to take even a small bit of advantage of it this afternoon. Thank you very much.
President Anderson, it's always a pleasure to have you. Thank you for your support. I have to say that President Anderson has always been part of our activities, and we always get a prompt, positive response, not just for our workshops, but also constant support throughout. So I'm very, very grateful to have you here and grateful for your comments. I want to thank you all for coming, and in the time that I have, I will share a few thoughts with you. and then provide the rest of the afternoon for my partners, my colleagues, my team members to present results of the work that we've been doing and engage with you in the relevant debates. I put a tweet yesterday, sort of, talking about today's meeting, and I said, what do mobilization, censorship, entrepreneurship, and copyright have in common? Join the conversation tomorrow at the workshop. I think President Anderson gave away the answer, if I may say so. But I will tell you my thoughts on this at the end of my few words. I will just start by telling you more about who we are, what we do, what our values are, the kind of work that we are engaged in with together, first of all, and then with our partners and with the larger community, maybe that be in Egypt or in the larger environment. We very much believe, we have a firm belief in knowledge as a cornerstone of development, and the incredible potential of technology in realizing this promise through harnessing the power of human capital, intellectual capital, and social capital. This is the starting point of what we do and who we are. When we talk about development, we talk about development in its wider sense, so we go beyond the growth in GDP or even inclusive economic growth. We think of development as a paradigm of dignity, self-esteem, of realizing the potential of the human capacity. Development as freedom, freedom from poverty, freedom from servitude, economic, political, social, and culture. And in that sense, this sense of active citizenry, the development as participation, knowledge becomes a very important component of this. And when we think of access to knowledge, we don't just think of passive access to information, data, important as that might be. We think of active participation, active engagement and participation in the process of creation of not just information data, but also the right scope thinking of human intellectual endeavors, scholarship, culture, media, technology, literature, you name it. In that sense, knowledge becomes a vehicle for achieving development in a broader sense, and certainly technologies and in a great way, to a great extent, digital technologies become an important part. So, also not less important is the human capital part of the access to knowledge paradigm, is the development of capacity of intellectual, social human capital in the production and sharing, manipulation and sharing of knowledge. So a brief access to knowledge becomes then the right to receive, but also to participate in the creation, manipulation, and extension of all these expressions of human inquiry and understanding. And in that sense, technologies emerge as a very important enabler, if you will, of achieving this potential, but also the flip side is that technologies can also provide the vehicle for threats to achieving this objective, as Anderson has alluded to and pointed to. So in many ways, the development gap is a knowledge gap. And at the end of the day, an idea gap and bridging this gap can make us take leaps and bounds on the road of catching up with technology being an important thing. Technology can help realize the democratization of knowledge and innovation, empower the small player, which is, I don't like to use the word the weak, I say the less strong and marginalized. It can help overcome the barriers. We have a blog at the center that is created by our fellow Nicola and one of our team members, Stephanie. And here the blog is entitled Knowledge Base, Access to Knowledge Between Avenues and Walls. And that's important. I'd like to expand those avenues and break those walls if we can, break them down. So what are the barriers to access to knowledge? The barriers can take various forms. They can be political, with restrictions on freedom of expression, censorship and surveillance. They can be economic, with market concentrations and the ownership structure. They can be legal through various types of legislative constraints and through sometimes intellectual property regimes that can be stifling to the sharing and production of knowledge. They can be culture, if we have a culture of closure and fear of releasing data and information. They can be technological, of course, and they can also actually the very fact of having a digital divide and inequality of not just access to the technologies, but in the use of technologies and contribution to technologies. So in that sense, the role of knowledge for promoting development can actually work either way. Many times the gap, if we are not now with what is happening in more advanced societies. And I say societies, not just economies. So in that sense, our research as a team, in collaboration with our partners, we work on issues related to access to knowledge. Our research conceptualizes and investigates economic and legal issues. For example, we study various forms of markets. We study media, we study technology, software. We look at mobilization issues and use of social media and technologies in general. We look at creative industries. We study the music industry. We look at innovation, access to knowledge. There are also aspects, this kind of closure, technological closure, intellectual property laws can actually limit the abilities of this sharing and this manipulation. You have what's called the access versus incentives trade-off, and in that case we try to bridge this gap. We try to ease the tension between knowledge producers and knowledge creation through researching business models that can be of benefit to both groups and that actually capitalize on the use of technologies. We're very much interested in enabling environments for the promotion and creation of knowledge. In that sense, I do have a summary of our networks and the projects that we are involved with. We are part of several global and regional networks. It is on the slide in front of you, I think it's up. So basically, we are participants in the network of internet and society. We work with like-minded centers that are interested in the same issues, and related to this, a part of this is championed by Harvard University's Berkman Center for Internet and Society, with whom we have a project working on studying the mobilization for change, the role of the network public sphere in mobilization and civic engagement. We're also founding members of the Access to Knowledge Global Academy, where we are partners with Yale Information Society Project of the Yale Law School, and partners from India, China, and South Africa. And we have continuous collaboration on global censorship and access to knowledge. We just finished a book project that my colleagues will show in the third session today. And we're starting a new project looking also at censorship and mobile technologies. We are the North African hub of the Open African Innovation and Research Open Air Network. We have done work on copyright and creativity in various creative industries and music, but also other forms of creativity in Egypt and Tunisia. And at this point, we are starting a new phase, again with the same network, looking at scaling up African technology startups. Last but not least, we have a new project on harnessing the economic power of data in the MENA region. Within that, there is research on digital entrepreneurship in Egypt, where two of my colleagues at the research team will present their research in one of the afternoon sessions, or maybe early evening sessions today. The reason I put them here is that really this paves the way for our sessions. It sort of frames the discussions that we will have today. So, and also to attempt to answer the question that I put out to challenge myself, what do mobilization, censorship, copyright, and entrepreneurship have in common? And really, looking at the different sessions that we have this afternoon, the next session that we move into after my talk is looking at the network public sphere and its role in civic engagement and participation. This is a project we're working on with our partners at Harvard's Berkman Center and also with our partners from Tunisia. And we will hear more about this from my colleagues, but we're really looking at the role of digital technologies, the internet-mediated public sphere as opposed to the mass media-mediated public sphere of the pre-internet era. And what this has changed, there's the literature by Joachim Berkman, who is really our theoretical framework for this, has done work to show that what has happened as a result of this new internet-mediated public sphere and how the discussions have taken place and what this means for mobilization. Of course, we have had our experience in Egypt and Tunisia, and what we have attempted to delve in with our partners is what is the story for that part of the world. On one hand, our partners are studying the interactions on Twitter, on Facebook, on the blogosphere, but together we're also looking at what's happening on the ground and how do these two worlds work together, what are the dynamics, and what have we seen over the past years. This will be the following session before session 2, right after my talk. The next session will be a session on censorship, and again, through our colleagues, Ramesh from Center for Information Society, and Colin from Yale Law School, and Lina, our own fellow Lina, we'll have a conversation on the role of technologies and censorship. And can technologies be themselves means of censorship? Can technologies allow for censorship? Can we actually work on technologies that circumvent censorship? What does that mean for access to knowledge? So in a way, that other session shows us the challenges to the use of technologies and how can we, deal with those walls, walls in promoting access to knowledge and development as freedom. Then we look at entrepreneurship and the promise of digital entrepreneurship. So a positive story, a promise rather than a threat of technologies for development and what this can mean. And this, as I mentioned, relates to our upcoming recycling project on data evolution with partners in Morocco and Palestine. And really we're looking at how data can be harnessed for development in the region. I will just mention an anecdote. We've been having 3-day meetings with our partners, and with our partners at IDRC who are supporting this research. And last night I was, logging off at 10 p.m. and I opened the newspaper and there was an article about data evolution and development. And I said we've been discussing this for the past 3 days, and it was a translation from the Berkman Institute. So bringing these issues to the region is new, and I'm very, very proud to have this network as, being here in the center of this network, the hub for this network in the Arab world. Lots to learn, lots to look at, with lots of promise. So that's a positive promise of digital technologies for development. And then last but not least, the last session we have today is about copyright. And I was invited to teach a Harvard Law School course called Copyright X that is taught by Professor Terry Fisher at Harvard. And the course is offered in different versions. It is offered in an online, massive open online course, a MOOC, that Madam from our team has taken. It is also offered at the Harvard Law School itself, and it's offered in standardized versions that I was teaching along with many other partners all over the world. And it was a very interesting experience. We had 80 students. So in the last session today, we're having one of the students in the class speak about their experience. Then we have also Tatum, who worked at the course at Harvard, and also joined me here last spring. With Naham and the four of us, we're going to have a conversation about the experience of teaching a course on copyright. The course was entitled The Economics of Copyright and Creativity, because this is a department of economics. And at the beginning, the students were surprised why we would be learning about copyright per se, but then they really, as the course progressed, they really saw copyright, and this is, these are accounts of the facilitation, all the barriers, the blockage of knowledge and content which flows through these technological tools and pipes and platforms. And really sometimes the blockage or the facilitation can take place using the very tools of digital technologies. The themes that we discuss in our sessions tell us about the promise of digital technologies to achieve higher developmental goals, but also the threats that are entailed in the process, the avenues and modes that we have on our blog as a very suitable title for our work. So the objective of our work is to always promote the openness, the inclusion, the democratization of knowledge and of technologies. Here, great friends and supporters of our work within several of these areas that I have mentioned. Also, we are very grateful to Mr. Richard Bartlett, who enables us, to supports us to work with our partners at the Information Society project. I'm very thankful to the speakers who have taken the time and the effort to fly and to take very long flights, from India, from the US, and a slightly shorter flight, but also directly from Tunisia.